Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff. I'm the host of the podcast, and we talk about all things HR, recruitment, HR tech, AI, leadership, and then the world of work. The episodes live on our website at ScaleHR.com, also on YouTube, and where all of our episodes, are. And if you want to share a comment, please do. I'm sure they're all there. And so this is a really cool topic here. The first time that we're actually diving into this topic of reference checks. And so the topic is the truth behind the call, why reference checks don't matter in 2025. And so, I mean, if you would have talked to me just a few years ago, I would have said, I don't know, background checks, reference checks need to die because they're useless. But, that was probably a little bit too simplistic of me to say that. But we have an expert here in James Lord who is going to tell me why we still need them. I want to set the stage of this topic, which is a couple of points. So the first one here is, in the world of AI, one thing hasn't changed. People work with people. So that's not changing. Maybe one day, maybe we'll just be a workforce of robots. But during my lifetime, that's not going to happen. And so hiring today is filled with AI tools, skills assessment, automation, data dashboard. But reference checks remain one of the only ways to really understand how someone can actually behave in the workplace. And not the resume version, not their interview persona, but real patterns, habits, and how they show up for others. And so that's point number one. Point number two, the problem isn't reference checks. It's how we do them. And I would actually agree with that. And so when I was researching this topic, that definitely struck out to me. So most people don't get value from reference checks because the process is broken. Rush calls, generic questions, or just trying to confirm what we already know. But when done properly, reference checks can reveal red flags, validate strength, and drastically reduce hiring risk. Today, we're exploring why they matter more than ever and how to take them truly meaningful. And so there is a lot to talk about here. I know that a lot of my viewers of this podcast, probably have very strong opinions about reference checks. But I just want to welcome James Lord, who I've known for some time, to the podcast. And so James, welcome to the Unmuted Podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here. And hello to all the listeners out there.
Thank you. So we'll just dive right in. So maybe you can give our viewers a bit of a overview of what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I make reference checks not suck, and as kind of the sticker, I would say. References are kind of always fall into a category of, confirming what we already know. It's a box tick exercise at the end of a process. Very little value is gained from them most of the time. And the methodology that we use to get that information isn't particularly fit for purpose, right? So references always do not really get a lot of love, and I completely understand that. And I think a lot of people have got misconceptions of their value from their own lived experience of getting the candidate to nominate 2 or 3 references of whom they're, of course, only going to give favourable contacts. So I think the onus is on us as the hiring organisation to put some structure, rigour in place, make it quick, easy, simple and safe, and of course be asking evidence-based questions that can open up a whole ton of insight into this candidate's past experience. So what do I do every day? I make it a lot easier for organizations to speed up the process of reference checks, make them a valuable and strategic asset in their process, and have it all fully integrated into where they spend most of their time, which is in the ATS or HR.
So I just wanted to just ask my first question of you. So obviously the world has changed since COVID, I would say, and you've got AI just obviously blowing up. I'm not going to dive into that. But why do you believe reference checks still hold so much value? You kind of alluded to it already, but maybe you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, your introduction of the topic there, I think, is hit the nail on the head. Humans hire humans. And no matter all of the other noise around the process, we still have to trust our instincts that this individual in front of us is going to be the right fit for our organization. We can trust them to do the role. We can trust them with personal, sensitive financial data, information we can trust them to not be inappropriate at the holiday party. There's so many different facets to that kind of leap of faith almost, right? And how do we do that when the candidate is obviously always going to put their best foot forward? We're going to see the polished version of themselves, their polished, GPT generated resume, or their, interview where they're all polished. So what we really want to do is ask specific and pertinent questions that pertain to their skills and experience of observed behaviors from other human beings who can really kind of shed light on that individual. The way that I like to think about references is almost like a SWOT analysis of the candidate: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we should be able to use this information that we get back from references for better onboarding experiences for the candidate, but also from a learning and development and L&D perspective. Because if we understand how they best learn, what they're really good at, and other areas for improvement, that can really determine how successful they're going to be in our organization. So I think now so more than ever, where we all live behind screens and we can't really verify someone's identity, we don't know. And there's a lot of misrepresentation and, dare I say it, sometimes even desperation out there. I think we need to get back to the basics. You need to check off your bases and make sure you do your reference checks thoroughly.
Yeah, I feel like they've almost made a comeback, like just in the last couple of years. I know that from my vantage point, obviously, I was a former HR leader, and my career is a little bit different than yours. But you almost feel like just in the last couple of years alone, because of all of the challenges with like AI and fake interviews and all these types of things, that the reference check has made a sort of a comeback. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really quite exciting in a way. I've been in the reference check space myself personally for about 10 years. And as much as references can be a really valuable source of data and benchmarking and insights, it hasn't become as front and center as it has in these last couple of years, where misrepresentation and fake profiles, interviews, etc., has become so heightened. So I think it's actually very exciting to watch and be a part of that, right in the middle. So yes, it's become more popular again, for sure.
So reference check are just a part of the full hiring process. And so there's interviews, how many there are, in a process, assessment. You could be using other like AI tools. And to all of those things, you might actually miss something. So what can a reference check actually reveal to an organization, hiring manager, recruiter, that those other things can't?
Yeah, good question. So I think it's really, you need to be led by asking the right questions. It's a generic set of 10 or 15 questions that's been sat on the desk covering dust for God knows how many years. It's probably not appropriate to be making a critical hire, or even someone, regardless of their department. If that individual is particularly, this is where this is particularly pertinent. If the individual that you're hiring is in a position of trust, either directly or indirectly, you have to do your due diligence. And the questions that you should be asking should be specific to the outcome that you want from them. So, for example, if you were hiring a finance manager, you would probably want to be asking questions around, attention to detail and accuracy and honesty and ability to use pivot tables and spreadsheets and things like that. That's obviously all specific to that role, versus if you were hiring someone in a sales or an account management capability, for example, very different set of questions. Again, a different set of questions versus a developer, engineering person. So I think it really comes down to the questions. If you ask the right questions in the right way, you will start to reveal a lot of really valuable information.
And so obviously a lot of companies don't actually use them properly. And so, a lot can go wrong with reference check. And so what does a high value, properly done reference check actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so it should be, depending on your internal process, oftentimes they're just before an offer, a job offer. And you would say, hey, congratulations, James, you've proceeded to the next stage. We're going to offer you a role with X organization, but your role is subject to satisfactory references and or background check potentially. And that's the point in which you should probably have some sort of trigger in your internal system, your HRAS, your ATS. You press a button and the process of obtaining references should then start. So you should obviously gain consent and permission before we do anything. We should have these audit trails. We should have all the checks and balances in place, digital behavior tracking, things like IP address, device, etc. That's all super, super important. But the end state should be, you should be getting references back in your inbox or in your hiring manager's inbox to either, yes, confirm what you already know, but most importantly, uncover what you don't. Because references done well will absolutely, and I've seen it 100 times, impact hiring outcomes. So the onus is on the organization to do that thoroughly and efficiently in a quick step manner. When we get that information back, the reports should be easy to read. In my opinion, they should not be anonymized. So I should be able to see exactly which individual has said about the candidate, and give myself the opportunity to follow up with them if I want to probe or ask further questions. Jeff, what do you mean about this with James? Can you explain? Give me more context. That's really important. And then we should be able to, this report should be really easy to read. I should be able to benchmark the candidate to others, like peers. How does this candidate fare against these particular competencies that we know are important for this particular specialism? This should happen in hours or days, worst case, not weeks, which is what so many of my clients' existing processes are. It takes them a week or more.
Yeah, and it depends on how someone does them. Obviously, getting a hold of someone physically. I remember I was recently a reference for someone. So that's what happens when you get older, is that you start to become references for more people. So this person, the hiring manager, was the one who was doing them, and she kept calling me, but wasn't able to actually pick up. And so I called her back, and I said, "Look, why don't we schedule a time?" Right. And she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't even send me an email. She wouldn't use. I'm just like, so this is going to go on forever because I can't guarantee when I'm going to be available. Right. So why don't we set a time? So sometimes, due to really stupid processes and dumb people, could take a while. And so just wondering if you can share an example from your career where reference check actually changed the outcome of the hiring decision, positively or negatively, but it's more fun to talk about the negative. And then what that tells us about, the importance of doing them right.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many examples, and I'm obviously not going to reveal any identities of organizations that I've worked with, but
no, we don't want to do that.
I wouldn't
but if you want to, that's fine. It might put you in some hot water, though.
I would never do that, but I think
I know
I can't. I'm not allowed to do that. But there was a scenario a couple of years ago with a major bank, and this bank was hiring an audit manager, of all things. And this senior audit manager had told the organization that they had 3 references that would meet their criteria, by the way. It wasn't just a buddy that he plays baseball with. It was, 3 legitimate professional references that the hiring organization had specified they wanted from his career. And this audit manager nominated these 3 references, all of whom were supposed to be in different locations. One was supposed to be here in Toronto, Canada. One was supposed to be in New York City, and another was supposed to be in London, England. All 3 references came back for this individual within 1 hour, which we thought was a bit odd because the career was spanning 15 years. They all came back within 1 hour, and it turns out they were all in Hamilton, Ontario. So when we started to dig in a little bit deeper in terms of, okay, why have they all come back? They're all just hanging out, all these references in a basement in Hamilton, Ontario. Well, it turns out the reference had made up email addresses in the alias of the individuals. So when we go and look at these people in, the senior manager in New York City, London, UK, here in Toronto, they were, those names, but the email addresses, this individual candidate controlled himself. And he obviously went into extraordinary detail, which I don't need to reveal, but it was basically like, hey, pick me, hire me. You've got to hire this individual, and lots of stories around, why he's competent for the role. The irony is the guy was an audit manager. So there was an audit process in place. So we could see all of this and, everything was stacking up. We presented this back to the client. And in that instance, the client obviously confronted the candidate with this information and said, well, hey, Jeff, can you explain why your 3 references have all come back and turn out they're in a residential street, probably in a basement in Hamilton, Ontario, within 1 hour? And the candidate came clean, actually, in that scenario. They said, yeah,
really?
I made them up myself. And so that is the beginning of a working relationship has effectively been marred by distrust and misrepresentation right at the
Absolutely.
very beginning, right at the outset. How, we're kind of on the back foot here. How can I proceed forward? Now, it's good that the candidate came clear, but I've also heard other scenarios of candidates, doubling down. And so, no, I just happened to bump into my reference. Both my New
Yeah.
York City and my London, they just
Yeah.
happened to be in my neighborhood, and we all just went into the
In
Starbucks.
Hamilton.
Right. We all just went into the Starbucks or the Tim Hortons in Hamilton, and we just hung out. So, this happens, right? And I think the reality is the risk of not doing references thoroughly outweighs the risk of doing them. Because if you don't do a reference and you don't have your checks and balances in place, your due diligence, God forbid you do hire a bad candidate and it comes out in the wash a couple of months, maybe even a year or so down the street. If you haven't done your thorough due diligence, that's on your head, right? So that's not good. We want to remove any risk whatsoever. And for a nominal cost, like a very low investment, to me, it's a complete no-brainer. Like, I'm just going to press one button in my HRAS. I'm going to spend a couple of bucks, and I'm going to have this information back in hours.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I've had many situations during my career where we actually didn't hire someone based on their references. And it wasn't that it came back scathing. It was that there were so many things that were odd about the references. So to your point, I never had a situation where someone made them up and they all happened to be in Hamilton, Ontario. But there's been a lot of weird things that have gone on. And it's like, wait a minute, if we're going to start out this employment partnership with this person and we're not even on solid footing, and this is supposed to be the time where they're putting their best foot forward, so obviously something's off the rails. The last thing that I want to do is put our organization through this, because ultimately it's going to be absolutely just a lot of work, headache, chaos, all that kind of stuff. And it's not just going to be about that person. It also has an impact on just everybody else. And so, yeah, I mean, I've always, it's been a huge thing for me. So I was joking earlier when I said that they suck. So
No. But that's the thing, right? I mean, you've got so many examples. Other examples. I actually had this example, but I do drink my own Kool-Aid, Jeff. I should say that when I hire people on my own team, I reference check them thoroughly. Like, I very much do drink my own Kool-Aid. I had an individual a little while ago who was a super duper individual contributor. Hits all of their metrics, their KPIs, all that good stuff, like the number every month. This is a salesperson. Hits their numbers every month, every quarter, quarter over quarter, comes into any presentation, more or less, can be kind of poorly prepared, but still walks in and has such a high EQ, emotional intelligence, that they can just nail it anyway. That's great.
yeah.
But what happened is that individual sometimes is I don't know what was going on in their head, but they couldn't really focus on one thing, and they would sometimes miss, because their attention to detail was terrible, they would miss these notifications in their calendar and miss client or prospect meetings or partnership meetings. And the rest of the team, what would happen as a result of that, the rest of the team would kind of then have to scurry and kind of try and bring up to the standard of this one individual who was really kind of carrying the team. But that's a great example of, sure, I'm giving a great individual contributor, but I'm hiring you in a team capacity. So I really need to understand what your organizational citizenship is like, right? Are you going to be a good contributing member of my organization, or are you going to just be like, you're not a lone wolf here, right? So that these are all the certain observed behaviors and counterproductive work behaviors that we really need to be asking specific questions. Sometimes certain roles, you don't need to be a team player. You don't, right? You can be on your own as a lone wolf, and you're very well, and you can be praised hugely for that. But so often, certainly in smaller environments with organizations up to a couple of hundred people, every individual that we hire has to have fit. They have to be a culture add, right? They have to fit. Yeah. They can't be a standalone wolf. So there's lots of examples, but do your reference checks.
Yes. Well, I don't hire people anymore, but obviously I still advise some companies. But yeah, I actually find them fascinating, right? Because you get to learn more about the person. But I'm gonna try to view them more about, we've already made up our mind, so we want to hire the person. So it's used for us to have more information so that we can make sure that they do well. Really, so that's our
Exactly
That's our
that.
objective.
Confirm
Right.
what
So
you
that's our
know.
objective, but obviously when things come back and like, wait a minute here, time out, right? But I think nowadays, obviously, with having many different types of tools at our fingertips, integrations, the old days of having a really horrible experience with background check and screening type organization, those days are done. Now you can have it, fully integrated into your tech stack. So there's really no excuse really to not do them, I guess. So
Yeah. I mean, we said it right at the beginning of this call, right? I think it's one of those things that it's kind of gone full circle, and it's becoming more important now. But it's not it's not a shiny piece of AI tech or anything like. It's just like it's basic stuff that you really need to do well. And so often, the process hasn't been looked at, if ever, for oftentimes for more than many years, because it's one standardized process that's put in place. And like you say, we feel like we've made up our decision. We feel like we just want to validate our gut instincts and confirm what we already know. Great, move on. And if that is the case and you don't use references as a determining factor of the hiring outcome, then that's totally fine. Just make sure you do them from a due diligence perspective, and you actually you've got an audit trail of your gut instincts. But if you do them well, you will reveal way more than you originally hoped for, which could be both positive and negative. And I think then over time you start to build these benchmarks and insights, and then it becomes really powerful, really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question for you. So I asked everybody the same question: is so if our viewers can learn just one thing about anything that we've talked about today, what is that one thing?
Don't overlook reference checks.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well,
you don't have to.
I'll mention, listen back to the rest of this episode and you'll learn a lot more. There's just way more than meets the eye. It's not just a simple box tick. There is so much more value if they're done well. Evidence-based questions that are role-specific. Lead with data. Don't lead with your gut instinct is very important when you're hiring people, but lead with data and let the data do the talking, and you will be impressed about what you can find.
Fantastic. And so obviously I want to just point out that if anybody has any questions about anything to do with reference checks, James is the guy. Please reach out to him. Obviously, I'm sure he'd be thrilled to have you reach out. So James, I want to thank you for being here. And just for all of our viewers, this is the Unmuted podcast. And so I'm Jeff, your host. We talk about all things HR, HR tech, recruiting, hiring, world of work, AI, leadership, and so on. All of our episodes live on our website, GoScaleHR.com, also on our YouTube channel as well. So hit that bell button. If you want to know when the new episodes are coming, just hit the bell button and then it'll notify you. So I know that most HR people, hit it. It's up there somewhere.
Yeah,
but I know most HR people aren't YouTube folks or whatever, but I think it's really good to just hit that little button. So James, I want to thank you for being here, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.